Oh, it's going. We're live.
So be it.
Welcome to Elevation Mindset, and today we are talking about how to elevate your consistency. We thank all of you who are going to be joining us live, as well as those who are going to be following this recording. We're just going to wait for a couple more minutes as a few more people show up, and I guess we really want to show how consistency has changed over time and what that really means to us, and ways that we can engage it in a way in order to move towards the most ideal life for you.
Okay. So as we give people a few minutes, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you, and believe it or not, we show up for you. And we are, Michael and I started this journey a year and a half ago or so, and we decided that we wanted to be the ones to show up for others, to have conversations that matter, and to really go where very few people are going on the conversations on personal growth and development. We saw a field where, so many coaches were showing up, repeating and regurgitating the lessons of everyone else, but really without going into depth about how it impacts their personal life, how it shows up for them, and not just what they've overcome, but what they struggle with and where they fall down, because we're all human. And while we want our leaders and coaches to be people who have overcome, we also need to know that they're human. We also need to know, we need to be able to see ourselves in them. And so that's why Michael and I came together and showed up. And consistency is a great topic that we feel like very few people are talking about. And we hint and dance around it with topics like habits. Everyone talks about your habits, but where do those habits come from? And if you've followed us for any length of time, you know that we are all about getting to the root, getting to the place of origin. And you know that we talk about our identity, our beliefs, and right in with those primal assets that we have is a topic of consistency. So, Michael, you think we're ready? Okay.
Give me just a moment, please. I've got some people
Sure.
asking how to get into the event, so I thought it'd be worthwhile to send that for people who want to join us. Could have sworn it was in our.
So,
Beautiful. Just wait a couple
okay.
more minutes. It's now 5 after. You can give people a couple more minutes. I know that people tend to lag a little behind, just like we did this morning. So
Absolutely. Michael, all right, your morning rituals. Tell me, are you drinking tea, or what are you drinking right now?
So for morning rituals, it tends to be more water rather than tea. So I'm as well as we do a green smoothie as well, which is actually pretty common in the lifeboat community too. So we're actually on the process of moving into deep spring, which is an aspect of the Wild Fit program. So there's a whole lot of alkaline foods that we're eating. So the Alkagizer green smoothie is very much a very veggie heavy drink that you almost that they actually want you to chew. So it's like having a salad in your glass.
Oh,
So.
you're speaking my language.
Mm.
My go-to smoothie is, of course, I do mine for my immunity primarily. So mine is primarily veggies,
Mm-hmm.
with a hint of fruit in it. So
Mm-hmm.
just enough that it won't grow hair on my chest. So it's pretty hardcore.
Welcome, Marie. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. I was confused because I thought I was doing something wrong and I couldn't find the link.
Yeah, I just sent it out as a message to everybody there too. So it's surprising that it's not there. I added the link. So
that happens.
Surprise! You know, technology, things happen. How are you this morning?
I'm good. It's cold here though.
Oh, tell me where you are.
I'm in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada.
Oh my goodness. Okay, yes. Yes.
Well, I'm in right at the center of where all the Great Lakes join.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I'm sure you're in a colder area. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Uh-huh.
And so for us, it's cold if it's, below 70, below 60 Fahrenheit. So
yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit cold here. I'm in New Hampshire, so we're starting to get frost in the mornings. So it's getting a little chilly for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Welcome, Godson and John. Looks like have also joined us. So
yes,
having technical difficulties, but we'll be getting started here in a moment.
Good morning. Good to see everyone.
Good morning.
Hi, Godson. How are you?
I'm doing great. And you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, don't say that yet. We're just getting started. So you can, the proof is in the pudding, right?
Yeah. But I know surely that is going to be an interesting session.
Of course. We aim to please. And if it's
Thank you
not,
very much.
we send you a survey and we hope you'll let us know how we can improve.
Sure, Suzanne. Thanks.
Yeah. We want to be accountable to your time, to our time. Michael, you tell me when you're ready.
Oh, we're ready to go, I think.
Okay. Beautiful. Do you want to do the intro?
I will. So as we said here is that today we're talking about how to elevate your consistency. And consistency is certainly one of those words that can trigger some people. I know it certainly did for me, and it certainly showed up for me, as it tends to when we do these summits, is that particular subject that we are focusing on becomes that focus. That's certainly for the last week and a half or so. But what we really want to know is, what does consistency mean to you? That's kind of where I want to start. Is what shows up as consistency for you, and why is it important is where we're kind of going to next. And we like asking these deep kind of questions because we want to see people grow, see people elevate their lives. It is that practice in between games that's, to us, the most important. So that's where we started with Elevation Mindset, is asking deep questions like, what is grit? What is faith? What is identity? So my name is Michael Danklos of Elevate Your Best. I am a life coach, and I call myself a life vision outfitter. I help people discover, map out, and plot the course to their ideal life. And Suzanne and I have been on this path. This is now we're up to our 22nd one of these so far. And it's been an amazing ride to actually get involved with this. And Suzanne, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, it's so great to see everyone. And hello to our LinkedIn and YouTube communities. We really appreciate your time. So I am Suzanne Buchanan. I'm a career communication specialist. I'm also a global conflict analyst, and I run a small communications boutique company called Carrot Communications, and I love bringing people together for authentic conversations that matter. One thing that Michael and I have in common is our passion for impacting lives. And he does it through his coaching. He does it through how he shows up, in everywhere he goes. I also love impact. And for me, it's serving others, helping others realize their potential, and helping them with their messaging. But you will find me in places like this, bringing people together to have real conversations, real connections, and to spend time that moves our lives forward in important, significant ways. So thank you so much for being here.
So thank you, Marie, for kind of sharing your definition of what consistency means, showing up each day. And we really kind of did a back and forth around this is, what does it mean to each of us? So yes, showing up is important, and we appreciate that feedback. Though, is showing up the same way identically every day being consistent? Or is there a possibility for growth there? When is it, kind of that balance of consistent versus in a rut? So we picked this topic because it really kind of leads back to so much of the other focus ideas that we've had for this last year. And it really is one of the internal components of that, rather than one of the external ones. And we have talked about things like faith and beliefs and identity. And Suzanne and I both agree that consistency comes back to that level, not what we see outside. Yes, actions is very important, but how are we consistent in here? How are we consistent in the soul that's showing up every day? And I know for me, for a while there, I was doing my best to show up how other people wanted me to show up. And at least for me, that I was really striving to be the people pleaser, to become what people wanted me to be. But that actually triggered more irritation, more frustration, more discomfort, more, in many ways, more dis-ease in me. So I wasn't someone that was fun to be around. I wasn't someone that people wanted to spend time with, because I wasn't consistent with who I was. I was trying to be something that somebody else wanted me to be.
There it is, guys. I don't want you to miss that even when we show up in a similar pattern repeatedly, it could still be inconsistent with who we feel we really are, with who we know we can be. And guys, come on, how many of us feel that it's almost like a internal betrayal when we're not showing up to our potential? We know we can be more. We know we can do better. We know when we're not living up to our potential. And even that can make us feel that friction. And that is also inconsistency, right? Michael, how did you break with that? Or did you break with that?
It took a while for me to realize it, for sure. And I think that it's that awareness that actually was necessary first. So it does take that digging into, what is off here, what is not, what doesn't feel right. And that, I think, is where it started. And it unfortunately, I think not unfortunately, well, maybe fortunately, I'm not sure, it took the ending of a marriage for me to really get it, that I wasn't being the person that I knew I could be, and I wasn't actually being engaged and connected with the person that I was married to. And they certainly had a lot of expectations for me, but at least at the time, I didn't have the spine, the backbone to actually say, no, that's not who I am. And at least not to a degree that allowed me to be consistent. So I had to kind of raise my life again and start over in order to really find a way to be consistent with that. And I think that there's tends to be an opportunity to do that. It's not always, it's rarely comfortable to do that, but my whole life became different. My family structure dissolved just about. And I think that the key like indicator that I was actually moving towards a better space was when my daughter pointed it out of, this is the dad that I remember. Now it wasn't so much that I saw it happening, but certainly as it happened, I got feedback that, you know, I was now joking, playing, having fun, which humor is one of my core values, as I've discovered. There wasn't a lot of that when I was in that space, when I allowed myself to be in that space. So
yes, and I get this sense of, you know, what Michael's talking about is returning to who you really are. And his daughter could see it. His daughter brought it out. And I think each one of us has shown up in a space and felt like, this isn't me. And it's so important, Michael. I give you so much credit that you, I mean, it takes a lot of strength to realize where you're not showing up and that you were not consistent. And you just said you didn't have the spine at that time to really address some of those issues. And that's a powerful statement coming from a man. And I just want to give you so much credit for all the ways that you've grown to become who you are. I think, I mean, that's why I'm honored to be with you and love you as a partner in this crime, for sure.
So Maria, I see you've asked, you know, how did I do that? So I think it actually took a lot of the experiences, a lot of the tools, a lot of the people I'd surrounded myself with needed to change, because at least it's something that I had listened to one of the people that I follow on YouTube talking about, you know, I've got an idea where I want to go, but there are some people in your past who know you here, and that's kind of where they feel you need to stay in order for them to actually feel good about themselves. And I, in some ways, had to end those relationships. So that was part of it. But it also, it did require, like, I didn't see all the red flags of that relationship was ending. It probably had already ended 2 or 3 years before, as far as being a cohesive partnership with my wife at the time. And I'm the one who is the optimist. I wanted to stick it out. I didn't, you know, want to walk away from this, and had been given the opportunity many times to end the relationship. And in that there was one particular moment in time where it's like, okay, this is enough. And both of us were fed up with where we were going, and we weren't going in the same direction anymore. And it can be really hard to do that. So I'm on my 3rd marriage. So I'll actually, you know, that's the disclaimer here is that I'm not a 30-year marriage sort of person. My first relationship I felt was too short. So because of that, I didn't want to make that same mistake again. So I stuck it out to see if we could work it out. We could fix it, do therapy, do, you know, interactions, and in a way that actually helped us grow, but it wasn't the right relationship. One of the key things that I've discovered that I need in a relationship is acceptance of who I am. And that was not part of that relationship. I didn't realize that till after, of course. So I have been through transformational experiences like the Sterling Men's Weekend. I've actually been involved with a men's team. I've done a fair number of quests on Mind Valley to do all that inner work to understand. And really one of the biggest ones to me, and why this concept is relevant to the community, and why we're a majority of the people that tend to show up for these are people in Lifebook, is I had to discover what the formula was for me, because somebody else's formula works great for them, but it's really a matter of finding what is our purpose, what is our drive, what is our beliefs. And we'll be getting into that in a little bit too. It's really a matter of being consistent with our core identity, rather than the things that have been projected onto us and we've allowed to impact who we are.
Yeah. And, you know, guys, this shows up in so many ways. And it's important to not beat yourself up. I mean, I love what the example Michael's setting also, in that he allowed himself to move on. He did the work, he did the growth work, but he also allowed himself to move on. He didn't stay in that self-defeated mode that, oh, I failed again, or whatever that is. Instead, he refused to give into that. And sure, you might stay there for a little bit, and we all go through tough times, but you allowed yourself to love again. You allowed yourself to risk again. I mean, relationships, that's our heart, that's our soul. So you did that again. And of course, this shows up in our most intimate spaces. Of course, it also happens in the workplace, where we show up and we figure out that where we're working is inconsistent with who we are, or doesn't allow us to live to our potential. So, I mean, I've had both experiences where, I was in a very high profile job that very few people walk away from, working for the United States Department of Justice and doing good things for beautiful people across the country. And yet what people didn't know is there was corruption where I was, and there were serious problems, and they absolutely were in conflict. They made me, or I should say, by staying there, I sacrificed some of my values. And what you'll notice is repetitive and maybe a little daunting, is that in our path to realign, to become consistent with our path, there's some creative destruction happening. Michael talked about he had to, really change a lot of his life. Relationships gave way to create space for new ones to form. Habits had to die that were not serving him. We all have this, and it can be really hard. But if you have the right tools, and Michael will talk about tools, the right community with you, it's so much easier to make sure that consistency is an important part of your life. So definitely.
I see another question here from John too, is kind of correlating consistency and character development. So I think that
yes, we're gonna go there.
So thank you for the segue, John. I appreciate that.
Perfect.
Is this idea of consistency versus character development. We really believe that consistency is actually needs to go down to the core of who you are. And I see that there's this concept for you, John, that you are living excessively from your subconscious mind. And that's why you're wondering if that's holding you back. But even Marit, I think, said a little bit earlier around consistently showing up. And the idea of integrity and consistency, I think, are actually fairly similar in what we're talking about. So to me, that is that the subconscious and the conscious mind, our words and our actions all align. So can you live too excessively from your subconscious mind? I personally don't believe so. It may require some reprogramming of your subconscious mind, though. And that really is what things like lucid dreaming or hypnotherapy or psychotherapy can actually really get to the crux of whatever that core is that you feel like you're excessively coming from. Because at least for me, yes, there is some of those drives and some of those interests that may not be understood, but that's where I like to unpack all of that. Let's open that up and see what that is, so we can have the integrity of alignment, so we can be consistently having our words match our identity, having our actions match up with what the core of who we are is. Because many times we talk about the subconscious mind is the supercomputer that is
Exactly.
the 90% of our brain that we use. So why would I actually say, nope, I don't need that, when that's one of the most powerful tools that we have?
Yeah. And we know that the subconscious mind is the programmer, right? That's the root. and our conscious mind takes orders and implements. And so if we find that we have a pattern of behavior that betrays what we want, that is inconsistent, then that leads us back to the subconscious mind and looking at our patterns, our identity, and our beliefs. Somewhere in our identity and beliefs, we still have work to do. That is really the only time where you're going to have that inconsistency. And we all know those people who say one thing and do another, or we see their potential, yet their actions betray that potential. Every time that happens, you can go back to that identity and those beliefs and find, you can find the bugs in the code there for sure. Mm-hmm. I think what Michael and I are saying is we've had to do that work. And sometimes you have to do it repeatedly and prune that and tend to it and make it a part of our lifestyle so that we can address those issues. But we also are not ones that favor like the AA model, where you constantly repeat what you're not, or the bad behavior, like to consistently say, my name is Suzanne and I'm an alcoholic. Right there, you're rooting your identity in something. So we believe you have the capacity to change, to heal, but it does take that deep work and working on your subconscious. I hope that kind of helped address the question as well. And when we talk about this, talking about word origins and origins of definitions, when I was looking into consistency, I always look to see, I'm always interested in the intersection of our language and culture, because our language reflects so much about our identity, who we are and what we believe. And you'll find that the definitions of words don't always stay the same, and they evolve over time. And so when I was looking at consistency, I was really fascinated because the definition reflected something that I felt really deeply about the fact that consistency is something so much deeper than a behavior pattern. It goes down to what we just said, our beliefs and identity. And I love that first definition that we were offered, right? About it's showing up repeatedly in the same way. But the truth is, the word origins came into something different. I found a local definition and an obsolete definition. And the local definition was similar to what we speak about now, about how we are showing up and everything being similar or same in alignment. But the old definition that they called obsolete was about standing up. It's about being upright, not just in your actions, but in who you are. It was a deeper, more powerful word then. And it went back to like the Indo-European iterations of the language. And I realized how we've watered things down and how we water so many words down so that we feel more comfortable in who we are. And I kind of like the definitions they called archaic. And it really made me think about the language that we use today. And the language we use to describe ourselves. So we wanted to know, in your life, are there areas where you're struggling with consistency? We want to talk about that later, and we'll go into that a little bit more.
Hmm.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I'll tell you, personally, for those of you that haven't met me yet, my new friends, right? When Michael and I have these topics, I usually write up an invitation for it. And this month, actually more than any month in the entire time we've been doing this, I froze. I absolutely squirmed. I fidgeted and I froze. And I didn't show up and I wasn't consistent. And the word hit me in a way that, oh my goodness, it was like I wanted to jump out of my seat. And I realized, wow, there's something there that hurts significantly. And when I evaluated and really reflected on what the issue was, I felt two things really powerfully. One was the pain that I feel in, for those of you that don't know me, I have a rare, potentially fatal blood disease. And I go through periods where I get really sick. And during those times, it's really hard to stay on track with my potential, with my capacity. And I feel a little bit unfaithful to my purpose, to my beliefs. And I feel like there's a little betrayal that happens. And I know that sounds like I'm hard on myself, but this is not something that, it's not like a year of my life. This is every year. And there are areas where life happens that we can't help, but it still detracts us or slows us down from our potential. We still feel like we're not running at full speed. So that was one critical area that came up for me, that I was like, oh, I feel like even my body betrays myself. And it hurt. It hurt. And the other area that came up was just that I have really big goals and dreams. And it's that internal accountability that I know every one of you can relate to, especially those of you in the Mind Valley and Lifebook communities. You get this. You're called because you have this internal compass that's powerful. And you're called to a greater accountability. You're called to personal growth. You're called to develop powerful traits like integrity. You're called to a path of consistency, and you know you're not there. And that's why Michael and I show up, because we're not there either, but we're hell-bent on doing the best we can. We are committed and actually working to overcome so many areas so that we can live the best life that we can. And we know you are. So we are not here to say that we don't have our struggles in it. We're here to say, this is what we struggle with, but this is what we can do. And we wanted to open it up also to you. Say, we can talk about those areas that we all struggle with, but also Michael, are you okay with this? That we can also talk about some tools?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess there's one piece that I want to actually add to this too before we kind of move into tools, though,
Cool. Yeah.
is it's one of the aspects that in preparation for this we kind of talked about, and is also I think related to some of the comments that we're getting too, is consistency to me is also not about doing the same thing exactly the same way every single time.
Yes.
There's also this other aspect as well. There's this opportunity to iterate. If you're not learning from each cycle you do it, it's to me in my head, and I actually wrote this up in our invitation too, is you can consistently be growing, you can be consistently stagnating, you can be consistently shrinking, depending on the actions that you're taking. So it's also getting that time in for review, which is why I wanted to talk about this before we get into tools. Is the review part is many times the things that we forget about doing, me included, very much so. In fact, even for our summits here, I very rarely go back and review what we've done in the past, and it's one of those things that I'm challenging myself to do more often, is how can we make this experience better for the people who are watching as well as for us. And I think it's because we just think it's done, check the box and move on. But this opportunity, that's kind of the middle piece in my head, at least for one of the tools that I tend to recommend, which is something called a CPRA. So there are 3 steps to this. The first step to that is actually finding out from all the stakeholders what needs to happen. And then you actually build a CPRA, which oddly enough, the way that they spell it out is exactly the opposite of how you tend to do it. But figure out what your results are. What do you want to create? What are the tangible things that you want to create with something? And you do that before you define why you want to do it. If you know what the stakeholders want, what are the results you're looking to create, and concretely put those out there, because we want to actually move the needle from here to there based on what, if the stakeholder is ourself, maybe this is for sitting down with a partner or at your job that you want a particular outcome. Maybe it's for you, or maybe it's for a team, and really kind of figuring out what the results that you want to create. Then once you have those in place, you then define what the purpose is of all of those results. Why are those things relevant in a way where the result will actually have the intended outcome of the purpose. And
Michael,
lastly,
this is after reflection, correct?
This is after reflection. This is after figuring out what's needed, what's the change, what's the shift, what's the outcome that you want. As an example, there have been times whenever I've had to have a really deep conversation with a friend about something that's a sticky subject. If I go into that blind, if I go into that without any kind of preparation of my own intention,
right,
it can be really derailed and turn into a screaming match. So it is kind of coming from that place of I have this idea of that something is off, there's something different, there's a change I want to make, or something I want to build, something I want to create. It's a way for me to get really clear on the steps to get there.
Michael, have you used this specifically when it relates to consistency?
Yes.
Can you give us an example, or would you care to share so people can learn?
Absolutely. So the most common place that I used this was actually on the men's team, because that's actually the context in which it was actually pulled in. And oddly enough, I consistently used this technology for every single meeting we had. In fact, it was, to me, it was as required enough that we lost a team member because he wasn't willing to do it. He wasn't willing to actually set up and get this reviewed in that context, because it is a core of how that particular organization had growth built in to consistently move from point A to point B, is that you have defined what that is. Guts, and I'll be getting into each one of those pieces in a moment of what it means.
Yes, I was going to ask you also, because you're going over acronyms kind of fast.
Yes.
So, and then also, would you recommend this methodology for internal consistency? Because that's external. So what about personal growth and development, which is where our locus is right now?
Yes. So, and it's really intended for externalizing what we have in our head of what we want,
Mhm.
So we can see it, review it, and come back to the being
Yeah.
consistent to taking steps toward to get it.
Mhm.
So to lay out what each of the letters of the acronym is: context, purpose, results, and actions. That's the 4 pieces. So from a personal growth standpoint, it's also can be for your health plan. What is the health that you want to have? What's
Mhm.
the consistent place that you want to go? What are the results you want to create for your personal health? What are the results you want to create for your intellectual expansion? What are the results you want to create for your emotional well-being?
Mhm.
And I have used it for that, for my health specifically. And that's probably one of the easiest, just like in the Lifebook community. It's one of the most tangible things we can really put our finger on is, I want to be at this weight by this time. I want to be able to do these actions. I want to be flexible, to be able to touch this, or want to be able to lift that. So that can be what some of those really tangible results.
Mm.
Now, if we look at the CPRA versus Lifebook, they're very, very similar. It's a Lifebook to me is actually a broader spectrum. And it's one reason why I got so attached to the Lifebook process, is because it was a longer term. This is my life in the next 3 to 5 years, and it had the pieces that allowed me to engage with that to get there.
Mhm.
Versus the CPRA as a tool tends to be more of a finite, shorter term tool to get you across the finish line.
Cool.
So, and I can certainly send a link. I've got a Notion template that kind of spells some of this stuff out, but I definitely want to make it relatable to what we're talking about here. It's
Yeah.
really a matter of putting the signpost in of, this is where I'm consistently moving towards, to remind us when we veer off the path of, let's get back onto navigating towards where we want to be.
Mhm.
So results, next is purpose. Why do you want to create it? The last piece is context. What's the context that we hold in our head? Some people see that as a battle cry. Sometimes it's a passage from a book. It's really kind of the emotions that back up the purpose and the results.
Mm.
And you do all those things before you figure out what steps you're going to take to get there. It's very similar to the Lifebook process, where we go through premise, vision, and purpose before we get to strategy. We don't say that I'm going to actually work out 5 times a week and lift 3 times the weight I can, because we don't know what purpose, we don't know what vision we're looking to create. That's in kind of the larger context of things. That's the second step. But really kind of what I wanted to nail home though with this is that third step is go back and review, once you've crossed the finish line, once you've actually gone past the timeline that this larger commitment was done, is, did you achieve the results that you were aiming for?
Mhm.
Did you hold the context in order to get you there? Did this work for you? Were you consistently moving towards this? Was this enough to excite you, to engage you, to draw you in to do it? And I think that I've seen quite a few people, and myself included, that just want the result. I just want that thing right there, but I'm not willing to do the work before, and I'm not willing to do the work after. And I think that us being able to iterate, to consistently show up with that growth mindset is really kind of how we get there. So it's one of the tools that I wanted to bring here, because it's one that works really well for those short-term goals,
Mhm.
to get really clear, to refine what we have inside. It allows
Yes.
us to be aware of
And
it.
Godson, we see your question. We're going to get to these in just a second. Michael, one of the things that you have consistently talked about is having accountability, having people.
Hmm.
And can you talk a little bit about your role and what you've done to create the kind of insulation and support for change?
Hmm.
Because the structure is super important.
It is. And this kind of falls into one of the other tools that I like to talk about as well, which is the 4 disciplines of execution.
Mm.
So accountability is actually the fourth of those four disciplines. For me personally, I'm actually in 3 different accountability groups for different aspects of what I do in my life. One for career, one for my health, and then one is actually more around a particular program. I also manage accountability groups for other people as well. It's actually part of my lifebook leader role, because it's that idea of accountability to me is taking score in some ways of this game of life that we're in. And then the review process is also part of that. Is I say I'm going to do something, and then I'm actually not saying that just to myself, I'm actually saying that to one or more people. So it's actually externalized, and it allows us to have it reflected back to us, especially when I'm in that place of getting off track. Is you said last week this is what you're going to do. What happened? What happened with that? So the accountability for me in those constructs is really important, but it's also what I tend to do with how I approach social media. Is what I put out there is the things that I want to be held accountable to. This is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. That is my social accountability with my peers, with the people that I work with. Because, and we talked about accountability earlier on this year, it's not from a place of judgment. You are bad because you did this. It's more a matter of what lessons did you learn by this process. And that helps me get back to consistently growing where I want to in my life.
Yeah. And you know what I think people gloss over when we talk about accountability, because it is talked about more than some of the other things that we've discussed this year. I think what people miss is it requires a super high degree of honesty, of humility. We are admitting, and this, when Michael and I talk about accountability, this is not like on a need to know basis. We're not talking about, well, we let on what we want people to see that we've done. This is real accountability about how you're showing up. And there is nothing that will reveal your need for more consistency than putting your hopes and goals and dreams out there, putting your mission out there to the public, to someone else, and opening yourself, subjecting yourself, if we will, to feedback and to real accountability when you don't show up, when you are inconsistent. It's a big deal, guys. And I think people, we gloss it over like, oh, did you read those 3 chapters or something like that? This is a lot deeper than that. This is, and John, I think you were really talking about this. This is about your integrity. This is how you're showing up, and your willingness and your committedness to who you want to be, to your goals, and to really establishing a healthy, positive identity. So
Absolutely. And I would agree. It is a matter of getting back to that space
right.
of I am well, another one of those catchphrases which we love so much is I'm going to be vulnerable right now and show you what I'm going to be accountable to. And it's just like that. I know we talked about this, I think in last month or the month before, is if you have to state it's what you're doing, then it's probably not what you're doing. So, but yes, being willing to share your journey is as important as sharing your milestones.
That's right.
And that,
Merritt said it great in the chat. Like, be willing to share your struggles. Like I shared with oh my gosh, I did not expect consistency to hit me like that. Oh my gosh. it hit hard. It hurt. It still hurts. And I didn't show up. I didn't show up for my partner. I didn't show up in time. I didn't show up well. Whew. And I find, and this is just me, maybe, I think the world will tell you what they believe, but the leader who shows up and admits where they went wrong is the leader that's the leader for me. It's not the one that has everything figured out and is perfect all the time. I'll never have faith in that person. That person doesn't really exist. And I think as much as so many of us idolize some of the celebrity culture we see in media and influencers and politics, we know better. We know better.
So I also wanted to address Godson's question here of how we kind of relate our subject of consistency in uncertain times around career.
Yes.
I think that it is the big subject for October in this community is our career. And as I was thinking about answering this question, it went back to a talk I saw with Simon Sinek, where he had talked about the idea of being consistent to the brand, the identity, and the values of his company, and being willing to stick to that and be consistent, even in spite of, as an example, who are you going to work with? Who are you going to work for? Is that consistent with your personal values?
Mm-hmm.
Is that consistent with how you want to be seen in the world? Is that consistent with your identity? I think, Suzanne, you've already kind of touched on that a little bit, but can you go into that a little bit on how that showed up for you?
Yeah. And for everyone now, guys, I mean, they may tell you that the economy's great, but I think we know better globally. And we see inflation and we see what's happening. So, I mean, I've seen posts on LinkedIn where a father posts about it's the longest period he's ever been unemployed, and he just wants to feed his children. And really begging people to send him job opportunities because he's been applying and nothing's happening. So he was appealing to recruiters online. And he said, posting this is against everything I believe. And, he said, the humility it took him, he felt defeated. He felt inconsistent with who he was. And I looked at his profile and he was a professional. He had 1 or 2 degrees. He had a lot of professional experience and he was having a horrible time. So how do we maintain our consistency when things may fall apart around us?
Well, and
go ahead.
It's balancing those two things too. Is I'm struggling because I'm starving, if you will. I'm starving with money coming in to support my family, and at the same time being consistent with your identity and who you are. And unfortunately, the further along we get with this, it's something they talk about in the Wild Fit program too. Is the more hungry you are, the more things you consider to be food. And so how do we find that balance, I guess, is, in the career category is I need to make money in order to support my family. I need to, at the same time, have something that I am passionate about doing.
Well, not just that, but they need to feel valued. They need to feel like they can contribute. We need to feel like we have purpose. We can contribute to this world. And when you have that economic instability, it takes that pride out. It takes that your faith in who you are. Even it makes you question things. And guys, because of my blood disease, I would never step foot near the vaccines because I get very sick with the flu vaccine. Like 105 fever, hospitalization, my body reacts horribly. So there was no way I was going to go for the COVID vaccine. And, all politics aside, that would be very dangerous to me physically. And I have lost contracts, many contracts, because I was not vaccinated. So I definitely get that. And it's hard. But what I would say is, number one, habits, your personal habits are going to matter during this time, that you have those sources that reaffirm your own values, your identity. And so often we peg our identity to our career. But times like this will blow that up. And that's when we realize our identity has to be rooted in something profoundly deeper, because all of that is physical can be blown away. And for me, also with my health, I've learned that, because there were times when I was so sick I couldn't work. So who am I then? Am I suddenly not a person of value?
Mm-hmm.
So this really causes us to kind of reevaluate where our source of identity comes from and our beliefs about who we are. If you believe you're valuable because you contribute to society through your career, it's going to be vulnerable during times of instability. But if you believe you are inherently worthy and you matter just by being here, you've got some kind of insulation from those times of instability. Now, on a more practical level, you can show up. You can still show up and be consistent in inconsistent times. You can show up on social media. You can offer value in the space where you are, so that when employers do see you or whatever's happening, that you are clearly demonstrating what your values are. So that is one thing. Volunteering is another way. Posting great things about the industries you want to work in, or good things that are happening in the midst of instability. Being an advocate for people who have no voice is a powerful way to contribute. So whatever those ways are that you're showing up, you have to make sure they're consistent with your beliefs.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to touch on this because we had some good comments here in the chat, is that idea of asking for help.
Yeah.
Especially here in the US or in the Western world as well, is that you have to stand alone. I have to do this by myself. Otherwise, I'm not valuable. If I ask for help, I'm weak. If I ask for help, I'm not standing up and actually living to that threshold. I had a conversation with one of my clients recently, and in an Eastern culture, in the Asian culture, it is very much about what the community does. It's not me solo. And it is a completely different cultural shift. And that's one of the things we really want to kind of touch on for this idea, is that it is different in different cultures. And I think that it's the concept of, if I have an expectation that I haven't voiced, it will almost always be a failed expectation. If there's something that I want from a situation, if I have not voiced that's what I want, then what the likelihood of me getting it is reduced significantly. And it's that, well, if you know me, one of my favorite conversations with a partner is, if you knew me well enough, you'd know that that's what I wanted. It's like, well, if you've never said it ever, I'm not a mind reader yet. I'm working on it, but I'm not a mind reader yet.
Exactly.
So let's actually figure out really what we want out of this. You set that expectation, ask. And I like that Ken Honda, if you need money, ask for it. I love that, because then it's an opportunity for people to have that exchange of value. So going back to Godson's original question, I think it is, find a place where you can provide value to your community, whatever that community is. If that is local, if that is actually on your block, if that's in your city, if that's in your country, if that's across the world, find something that you bring of value, because that to me, career is the exchange, and money itself is the exchange of value, and career is the exchange of services, it's the exchange of products, it's ways that we can actually show up in the world. But I think that us consistently driving towards this is where my strength is.
Mm.
This is where I can provide the most value. I am never going to make money as a singer. I just am not. That is not consistent with who I am, and people tell me not to. So, however, there are other places. I ask deep questions of people. So that's a place that I play into. And that's in both my job as well as in my business. And I think that, and that's one of the things that I've actually kind of coming back to this idea of career. I've actually laid out my category for career in a way that I can bring that everywhere I show up.
Yeah.
Everywhere I can provide value is like this. Not that I have this job doing this action. Not that I'm actually in this business doing this kind of work. This is how I show up to bring value to people, because that's where I can actually impact lives. That's where I can be consistent with who I am. It's one of the biggest things that I discovered about myself after I raised that relationship is I very much appreciate being of service to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to realize that service is not actually being their servant. And that's what I needed to come to grips with.
Mm. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And Godson, I see also, Godson had some great comments about, different ways that we can go about changing. And John, you did too, talking about reprogramming our subconscious. And that's why we talk about these tools, though, also. I think Michael and I would agree that we definitely agree on, affirmations are great, but affirmations without action we don't think are that great. And strategy is important as well. So even when it comes to changing something that's root deep, we're not just talking about the physical space. We think an action strategy is actually necessary for the deeper stuff too. Not just, making more money or something that's career oriented.
So there's one other piece here that we wanted to touch on as well. And it's something that I've certainly observed for my own life is we've kind of talked about career. We kind of talked about socially and culturally, but also for those of us who are parents, consistency is far more important than just about, to me, anything else. And it's consistency in your actions, because children don't learn by what you say, they learn by what you do. And being consistent in being, for me, like a lot of my purpose statements are about being a good example for my kid, for the children that I interact with. Yes, my kid is now 20, but that's, I've actually seen how what I've consistently done has shown up in her.
Yeah.
So I have the results of that. When I hear my words coming out of her mouth, when she's reminding me of the things that I've said to her 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, that to me is one of the biggest joys of she's actually found her own path. And it's because I consistently showed up as the best version of me that I can. And the idea of choices and consequences, consistency is important. If something happens once and you blow up and another time it's no big deal, you don't learn how to move forward consistently unless you actually know. It's kind of like a science experiment in many ways. Is if you take this action, you get this result. Take this action, get this result. The idea is to be able to recreate that if there's a particular outcome you want.
Yeah, but guys, make no mistake, you're still that child. You can still program your beliefs, and you are still constantly receiving data from the world about how you should live your life and who you should be. The media is sending us sets of values that we may or may not agree with. Our friends and family, they don't always have the best values. There's several of us that, we've had to move beyond some programming that we received. We have to choose something new. So please don't think that it's your programming is complete. And we know that you, especially those of us in the Mind Valley Lifebook type communities, you get that. You're here to work on the bugs. And we all have some reprogramming to do. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, and I love all the interaction we've had in the chat. I'm curious, now that we've kind of dug this up, we've actually got it out, we've kind of spread it out in front of us, is what is the takeaway for you in your life as far as how you can approach consistently differently? I mean, I'm not going to say better or worse, I'm going to say differently. How has this actually impacted your thoughts on that?
And please, we welcome you to come live. We always have like a dialogue. We'd love to hear from you. And also, if you want to talk about where you're struggling with consistency, we're game.
I've got too much to say to type, so I'm going to come live. If that's okay.
Please do.
I started typing and I went, no. I'm finding that sometimes the struggles outweigh the achievements that I have had through Lifebook. Partially because the people that are in my circle have no clue what Lifebook is, nor do they want to know. They think I'm in some kind of cult. And so sharing my achievements with them based on what I've planned out through my PVPS, and getting the strategies in place and that kind of stuff, they don't see how I've grown or whatever. The only ones that really see it, well, my daughter is the only one that really sees it and sees a difference, but she sees me 4 times a year, really. So then she sees a big difference in that time period. The people that you see you every day have no clue what you've been achieving or where you're going and what you're struggling with, right? So to answer your question is that I need to find a path that kind of eliminates the negative thought process of other people around me that I'm absorbing, because it really pushes me back into like spiraling down again, because I'm letting their non-understanding of what I've gone through dictate their thoughts about me, and I'm taking it in, and it drives me nuts that I take in how they see me, which I know I shouldn't, but I do.
Yeah.
So that was too much to write in the comments, and I thought I'd share that.
Thank you. And that is some of the biggest trouble when we're on this growth path that we're on, is the people who are surrounding us aren't always our biggest supporters, aren't always the people who are helping us get to that next level. So I went through Ken Wilber's program called Integral Life. And a lot of what he talks about is kind of that we're all on different levels, and it is unfair maybe, or it's impossible to judge one level from another because you're at a different level of understanding. And I believe that every concept on the planet has, and he would agree with this as well, depending what level you are at, is there's truth in everything that people say, but it's partial. That their journey and their struggle is their journey and their struggle, and yours is different. And one of the biggest things that I can share with you is do the best version of you. Be on your path. And when they check in with you and you are now a marathon ahead of them and they go, where did she go? You can say, well, I've been on this path and I'm going to get back to it. And as soon as you're ready to learn how I did it, then we can talk. But until then, I'm out running the marathon while you're sitting on the bench. So, and which is really hard because they want to judge you. It's the metaphor that I most commonly hear is the crabs in a bucket. Is that when you put crabs in a bucket, none of them can climb out because as soon as one does, everyone else pulls them back in. And it's really hard. I know it certainly was for me to say, it's time for me to be done with this because that is not an environment that's helping me become the version of me that I want. And yes, I took in that feedback as well that was negative about me. And it's like, what is the truth in that? Because there's going to be some semblance of truth in there because it's their truth. It's their experience of me. What can I learn from that? And how can I incorporate the lesson that's possible in that to then take my next step?
Michael, at what stage though did you start to say, I need to surround myself with more aligned people?
I think it actually, my choices led to a lot of people falling away. So in some ways, the environment provided some of that. And when I got to a space where I think this is when it started for me, like I said, that family unit fell apart in my second marriage. And that family unit was everything in my world at the time. There was no social life. I was working from home, so I wasn't even going out to a workplace. So when all of that fell away, and that was a pretty abrupt stop to all of that, I'm now finding myself with me and my daughter and my work. That's about all there was. It's like, okay, now that I am in a space where I have to build, what do I want to build?
Yeah.
And that's whenever I joined social groups that were hiking and biking. That's where I found the men's team. That's whenever I found Lifebook that actually gave me the tools to start defining what that was. So it was a matter of timing, and I was on a quest to find it. So
yeah, Merritt, and we feel you. Michael and I've both been there where the old crew dies off and you're not yet surrounded by the right people. And I would say I'm in a new stage of that too, as well. I would say right now where I'm not quite in the right structural setting yet, but that's also because my goals are a little bit higher, and at least than the people around me. So I have some of that as well. And it's Michael just said though, it happened because he set the intention, and just by you showing up today and talking about that and that's a search pattern. You're going to get there. You're going to find those people. And of course, Michael, if you know of any accountability groups and that might be ideal for Merritt, I think that would be a great connection. But keep showing up like this, keep talking about it. Like, I think it's a old children's book, like Are You My Mother? It's almost like a Dr. Seuss book, but where they go around and ask every kind of animal if you're my mother. And it's never right until finally you find the right fit. So keep asking. We also said that in the chat before. If you don't ask, you're not going to get it. So keep being that squeaky wheel and stay on that mission. You've got it. And you deserve to be surrounded by people who see and who understand that growth and are also watching their structures fall away and make room for new. Definitely.
So here's kind of, I know that we're talking a lot about Lifebook today, but I wanted to kind of come back to that as well. Is for me, I had to sit down and figure out what my values were, and then put that into my social category of what are the values of the people that I want to be surrounded with.
Yeah.
And it does kind of fall into that space of the law of attraction, that setting your vibration to that, be at the vibration. Because here's the tough love part of me that wants to say is the people that you're attracting are who you are, not who you want to be. So are you practicing what you want the people that you're attracting to be as well? And that is some of the stigma that the movie The Secret got is, what, it's my fault I have people who are hurting me.
Yes,
It's my fault that I have a disease. It's my fault that, my friend got killed in a car accident. Not specifically, but yes, is that it's that idea of the two things that are of a similar vibration, a similar magnetism, are attracted to each other. So if you are attracting people that you don't want in your life, those people are not a window into them, they're a mirror into you. So how are you showing up that is attracting that?
Yes, and honestly, vibrate so high that it shakes them off. Your vibration is so strong they can't hang on. Those mofos will just fall off. And they do, believe it or not. Especially the mofos, they go first. So for sure. And I practice that all the time. I call it detoxing. Really, it's like a detox and all the wrong people fall away. And I've been in some situations where even my family were concerned. And I told them, don't worry. I said, the universe, God, we've got this. And if it's not meant to be, it will fall away. And it's never not worked. It's never been wrong. So vibrate high, baby. And then by doing so, you send out the right signals. So you're going to attract your tribe.
Yes, exactly. And it's great that we have this idea of intention and vibration. I think is really important. And I agree with that it starts there, but that's not the end of the path either. Like we were talking back with the CPRA, the actions are necessary, and so is the review. Is, once again, it's that I'm just going to sit and meditate. We talk about this in the Lifebook community of, I'm just going to sit and meditate and hope for the best, and it will show up on my doorstep. But you got to buy a lottery ticket in order to win the lottery.
Well,
you have
and
to take the
Merritt,
inspired
you showed
action.
up, right? You showed up. Merritt took the action today. She showed up. And of course, for me, that's my caveat, guys, from here on out. Of course, when I say you vibrated a highest level, I don't mean in a cocoon somewhere, right? Like this is about when you walk in a room, are you the thermometer? Are you the thermostat? When I walk in a room, I change the temperature of the room. I don't adjust to it. I change it. That's how high I vibrate. So that's the power I think each one of us has. And Godson, that also goes to the career space. When you show up to your potential and you send out that vibration of value, of content, of integrity, you're going to find the right forces attracted to you. So I definitely believe that. Beautiful. Any other input? Any other comments, guys? You can hop on. Godson, that's beautiful. Would you like to read that out to us? I'd love to hear that from you.
Great. Sorry, let me say that if my network will be able to carry that, because sometimes my network fails. That's why.
Oh, well, I hear you beautifully
okay, you can hear
clearly.
me? Okay, good. like I said, one of the phrases I have in my life vision statement is to manifest the truest expression of myself, to try to achieve kind of calmness, patience, open-mindedness, and active listening, and choosing to accept and synthesize, and nurture my emotions to reflect and express my highest and prioritized values. To radiate my God-given gift, my not God-given gift in terms of service, through being with a strong character, passion, and compassion and commitment to my life vision fulfillment. So this has been one phrase I so much cherish in my statement, and day by day, try as much as possible based on the context to achieve consistency. It's not be easy, but I think this session gives an opportunity to once again know that it's a journey.
Absolutely.
It's a journey, and what I call mastery can only be achieved with a fraction of time, because you are going to as you go from one bus stop of the journey to another bus stop of the journey. So you get to experience, challenges. You got to learn lessons, and with wisdom to pass through life and achieve that mastery. So that's what I wanted to kind of point out, and I share with Mary. I mean, the way people look at you will look at you differently. What like you say, your daughter sees you for 4 times in a year. Some see you almost they don't see, but it is what you feel about it. How are you doing in terms of your life vision, in terms of your purpose of life that matters? And I think that also encourages me that consistency can only be achieved with a fraction of time.
Yes, absolutely. I do believe that, you guys need, that's important. Consistency needs time, right? And we're all on this path. It's a journey, Godson. You're so right. And I love your statement. It's beautiful. Definitely. Thank you for sharing it. It would not have been the same without you. Beautiful. Anyone else?
I like this idea. Consistency is like balance in my head, in that balance is not something that is a state in an individual moment. It is something we measure over time, because I don't think that there's ever a time that we are 100% balanced with all the things that are going on. Just like consistency, it's consistency from this to that. So are you consistent in this one macrosecond in your life? Is that consistent? Sometimes. Are my subconscious, my conscious, my words and my actions all in alignment? Is my soul speaking through my heart, through my mind, to my body? Can we be consistent in that moment? Yes. That's not how I relate to it, though. That's where I start. But I've fallen off the path. I've actually been out of alignment. I've been inconsistent. And that's whenever I've learned the pain for me of being in that space and reorienting and actually getting back into that place of consistency is where I've actually found the pleasure of being there. Whenever I actually am feeling fulfilled, whenever I'm feeling good in my possible discomfort, because I'm outside my comfort zone sometimes when doing that. But I think that it's this having the courage to actually stick to that consistent path of who our identity is.
Yeah. And I think that's important, though. We're not, guys, it's not always going to feel comfortable. It may be a lot easier and more comfortable to fall off the path into patterns we know, or into who we were. It's not always easy to walk the path of who we're becoming. It's uphill for a reason. And that's okay. It's okay. It's okay that I felt squirmy and fidgety when this came up. It hit something I needed to grow through. So that's okay. I mean, I hate to say it, but step into the squirm, people. Beautiful. Okay, guys. Yeah. Well, Godson, that's a whole nother conversation, talking about my expertise in global conflict in times of uncertainty. Oh my goodness, the world is a crazy place right now. And sadly, information is not flowing freely. So that is a whole conversation. But I would say that there is very little in the world that is consistent, except for people's ability to overcome. And I do believe in what Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, the moral arc of justice. And I think there's a universal moral arc of justice that will eventually prevail, but it might take a while. So yes, Merritt, good for you. Wise, very good. Okay, loves, anything else we can do for you? We do this once a month, and it ranges. Sometimes we have, 25 people, sometimes we have 10. We always show up though and keep it consistent. And we hope to see you again.
Speaking of, so the next one that we're going to be talking about is competence.
Ooh.
And we actually did these in a sequence for a reason. So we kind of opened this up of why are we talking about this stuff? Is we have to have the courage to take the step into our discomfort, consistency to take the actions till we reach a level of competence. That's kind of, there is an arc here that we're going through. We very much kind of planned this out, and that's coming up on November 5th, which is actually not very far from now. So we hope to see you there. We'll be putting information out there for people to know when this is showing up. We'd also like to encourage you. We do have a mailing list that we send out information about these on. We'd love to have you join us there. I will actually put that link in the chat. And this will be just about the summits. This is not going to be selling you on anything. It's not going to be spamming you. In fact, we probably don't send out enough to this.
Yeah.
So just be aware that essentially we are sending out information about these summits if you want to join us for the next one. And then after that, we're going to be doing vision. And then we're going to be talking about recovery, just to kind of give you a sneak peek of where we're going for the rest.
Alina, thank you so much for coming. We'd love to see everybody here. Check the link in the comments, and we will let it linger here for just a minute so you have time to access it, because we'd love to see you again. And Michael will post our events in Lifebook, but systems, technology, we'd love to have your email as well so that we know. Also, we'd love to hear from you to know what we can do better and how we can better serve you. So, and for those of you on YouTube, you'll see the link below in the comments as well, in the description. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And have a great weekend, wherever you are in the world. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, and we will see you actually in a week, if not sooner.